The humans of Earth joined the Galactic Federation 3 weeks ago. Their ship, the USS Pioneer, carried 50 men and women chosen to represent humanity. Captain Frank Miller stood tall as they docked at Central Station, the massive space hub, where all member species gathered. "Remember," he told his crew, "we are guests here. We represent all of Earth." The welcome ceremony dazzled them. Creatures of all shapes filled the grand hall. Some had scales, others had fur, some floated in the air while others slithered on the ground. The Zentonians, tall blue beings with 4 arms, led the Federation. The Arcasians, short purple creatures with large eyes, handled trade. The fierce Voltar, with their lion-like features, provided military strength. When shown to their seats, the humans hesitated. The Federation representatives had placed them in the middle of the room, surrounded by aliens on all sides. "Is there a problem, Captain Miller?" asked High Ambassador Zex, a Zentonian whose skin shimmered like the ocean. "No problem at all," Miller said with a smile. "Though my people would prefer seats along the back wall if possible." Ambassador Zex's upper arms crossed while his lower ones gestured dismissively. "The central seats are places of honor in our culture." Miller nodded. "We appreciate the honor, but my crew would be more comfortable against the wall." The aliens watched with curiosity as the humans moved to line the back of the room. Lieutenant Samantha Green noticed the whispers and strange looks they received. "They think we're being rude," she whispered to Miller. "Can't be helped," he replied, quietly. Better rude than exposed. In the days that followed, the humans learned about the Federation's technology and customs, but they also noticed how other species watched them with amusement. One morning in the dining hall, Jack Peterson, the security chief, sat with his back to the wall. He watched the door while eating. A group of Arcasians at the next table pointed and giggled. "The human needs to see the door," one said in broken English. "Maybe he thinks food will attack him." Peterson ignored them and continued eating. Lisa Davis, the cultural officer, documented these interactions in her reports. "The Federation species mock our defensive habits," she wrote. "They see our caution as primitive fear." During the first diplomatic meeting, Miller noticed that chairs had been arranged in circles, with no seats against walls. Without a word, several crew members took their chairs and moved them back. The alien diplomats exchanged looks. "Is something wrong with our seating arrangement?" asked Trill, an Arcasian diplomat. "Humans prefer to observe their surroundings," Miller explained, simply. "What do you fear here among friends?" A Voltar named Grex rumbled, his mane bristling. Miller smiled. "It's not fear. It's awareness." But the aliens didn't understand. They called humans wall huggers behind their backs. The nickname spread quickly through the station. One night, Samantha Green overheard 2 Zentonians talking in a corridor. "These humans are so jumpy," one said. "Always watching exits, always scanning rooms." "I heard their planet is very dangerous," the other replied. "Perhaps they never evolved past their survival instincts." "How primitive," the first one said. "No wonder they were so late to space travel." Green wanted to explain, but Captain Miller had ordered the crew to ignore the comments. "We're not here to change their minds," he'd said. "We're here to join the galactic community." The mockery grew worse when humans refused to sit with their backs to doors. At formal dinners, they turned their chairs to watch entrances. During lectures, they stood at the back instead of sitting in the middle rows. "The humans think assassins will burst in at any moment," joked a young Zentonian named Zalvi. Unlike the others, Zalvi seemed more curious than mocking. "Why do your people do this?" Zalvi asked Frank Miller after a meeting. Miller considered the question. On Earth, being 6 months past since the USS Pioneer joined the Galactic Federation, the humans had learned much about alien cultures, but the mockery hadn't stopped. If anything, it had grown worse. Jack Peterson stood in the training room, demonstrating hand-to-hand combat techniques to a small group of interested aliens. Most were Voltars, who respected physical prowess even if they found human habits strange. "Humans always watch for danger," Peterson explained as he moved. "We call it situational awareness." Zalvi, the young Zentonian who had spoken with Captain Miller months ago watched from the side. Unlike other aliens, Zalvi seemed genuinely interested in understanding humans. But why? Zalvi asked. Your species has achieved space travel. You no longer need to fear predators. Peterson smiled. Old habits die hard. For thousands of years, humans who didn't pay attention didn't survive. Across the station, Lisa Davis sat in a meeting with cultural representatives from 12 species. The topic was emergency protocols, and Davis noticed how casual the aliens seemed about safety. Humans prepare for problems before they happen, she tried to explain. We think about what might go wrong. An Arcasian diplomat waved her small hand. Such negative thinking. We prefer to expect good outcomes. Davis bit her tongue. These aliens had never known true danger. Their worlds had been peaceful for generations. They didn't understand what it meant to live on a planet where everything, weather, animals, even other humans, could kill you. That evening, Captain Miller received a message. A major diplomatic summit would take place in 2 days. All Federation species would attend to discuss new trade routes. And look at this, Miller said to Lieutenant Green, pointing at the seating chart. They've placed humans in the center of the room again. Green sighed. Should I request a change? Yes, Miller said, but I doubt they'll listen this time. He was right. The next day, the summit organizer, a tall Zentonian named Krell, refused their request. Captain Miller, Krell said with obvious annoyance, this behavior is becoming insulting. The center, seats are places of honor. Your continued refusal makes humans appear ungrateful. Miller tried to explain. It's not ingratitude. It's just how we operate. It's primitive paranoia, Krell said sharply. The Federation has known peace for centuries. There are no assassins or predators here. The day of the summit arrived. The Great Hall gleamed with decorations. Over 300 delegates from 27 species filled the room. The humans assigned seats sat empty in the middle. Instead, Miller and his crew stood along the back wall. This broke protocol completely. Aliens whispered and pointed as the summit began. Ambassador Zex approached Miller during a break. Captain, this is unacceptable. You're causing a scene. I apologize for any offense, Miller said firmly, but my crew stands where they can see the whole room. It's not negotiable. The whispers grew louder. Some aliens openly laughed at the paranoid humans. Later that day, Lisa Davis overheard 2 Voltars talking. These humans think they're still living in caves, one said. Always watching for danger that doesn't exist. I heard their planet is so violent they kill each other constantly, the other replied. No wonder they're so jumpy. Davis wanted to correct them, to explain that human caution wasn't weakness but strength. Instead, she recorded everything in her cultural notes. Jack Peterson noticed Zalvi watching the humans again. You're still curious about us, Peterson said. Zalvi nodded. Your species confuses me. You're advanced enough for space travel but behave as if surrounded by enemies. Perhaps we are, Peterson said. There are no enemies here, Zalvi insisted. Peterson smiled. I hope you're right. That night, Captain Miller met with his senior officers. The diplomatic incident had damaged their standing in the Federation. We won't change our ways, Miller told them. But we need to improve relations. From now on, we'll participate more, share our knowledge, but still maintain our protocols. They think we're backward, Green said. Let them think what they want, Miller replied. One day they may understand. As they spoke, far across the galaxy, a dark ship moved silently toward Federation space. Inside, creatures planned and prepared. The peaceful Federation had no idea what was coming, but the humans would be ready. Aware of your surroundings keeps you alive. But there are no predators here, Zalvi said. Miller smiled slightly. There are always predators, my friend. Sometimes you just don't see them coming. The aliens laughed at these words. They thought, humans were paranoid and backward. They didn't understand. Not yet, but they would learn. The alarm blared throughout Central Station. Captain Frank Miller was in the middle of breakfast when it sounded. Without hesitation, he stood up, his back straight, his mind clear. All Pioneer crew, Report to stations, he ordered into his communication device. Around him, aliens rushed about in confusion. Many had never heard the emergency alarm before. It had been decades since the last true emergency in Federation space. Miller reached the command center just as Admiral Vex of the Zentonians began speaking. "We have received a distress call from Outpost 7, the Admiral announced. "Unknown ships attacked without warning. The outpost reports heavy damage." The room filled with shocked murmurs. The Federation had known peace for so long that most species had forgotten what real danger felt like. "Our battle cruiser Celestial Harmony is responding," Admiral Vex continued. "They will arrive at Outpost 7 in 6 hours. Eric Sullivan, a human military consultant, stepped forward. "Admiral, may I ask about the Harmony's approach strategy?" The Admiral looked annoyed. "They will approach directly and engage the enemy." Sullivan frowned. "Without reconnaissance? Without knowing enemy numbers or capabilities?" "The Celestial Harmony is our most powerful ship," Vex said dismissively. "No pirate vessel would dare to challenge it." Miller and Sullivan exchanged worried glances but said nothing more. 6 hours later, the news arrived. The Celestial Harmony had been badly damaged. Over 100 crew members were dead or injured. The unknown enemy had escaped. In the emergency meeting that followed, Eric Sullivan studied the battle recordings. He noticed something that the aliens missed. "The attackers targeted the command deck first," he said. "They knew exactly where to hit." Admiral Vex waved a blue hand. "Coincidence? Pirates always aim for the largest part of a ship." "Not pirates," Sullivan insisted. "This was too organized, too precise." Again, the aliens ignored his input. 2 days later, the USS Pioneer received new orders. They were to help evacuate civilians from a small outpost near the attack site. Captain Miller gathered his crew. "This isn't a combat mission, but we'll treat it like one. Full defensive protocols." When they arrived at the outpost, Miller organized his team in groups of 3. Each group had assigned sectors and clear escape routes. They carried emergency supplies and weapons. The alien officials at the outpost watched the humans with confusion. "Why such caution?" asked the outpost leader, an elderly Arcasian. "The attack was far from here." "Better safe than sorry," Miller replied. The evacuation proceeded smoothly. The humans worked with quiet efficiency, always aware of their surroundings. They moved civilians to transport ships, helped with belongings, and kept everyone calm. Salvi, who had joined the mission, as a Federation observer, watched the humans closely. "Your people move differently during a crisis," Salvi said to Jack Peterson. "More focused, more coordinated." Peterson nodded. "This is what we train for." "But there's no immediate danger here," Salvi pointed out. "We act as if there is," Peterson explained. "That way, if danger comes, we're ready." Back on Central Station, news of more attacks arrived. 3 small outposts had been hit. In each case, the command centers were the first targets. Olivia Martinez, the communications officer on the Pioneer, noticed something in the attack pattern. "These aren't random," she told Captain Miller. "The attacks are moving inward from the outer systems following shipping lanes." Miller took this information to Federation Command. Admiral Vex and other leaders listened but seemed unconvinced. "Patterns where none exist," one Voltar general growled. "Humans always see threats in the stars." As the meeting ended, Alan Wright, the science officer, approached Miller. "Captain, I've been studying these attacks," he said quietly. "They're targeting leadership in each location. Command centers, communication hubs, decision makers." Miller's face grew serious. "Someone who knows if the alarm blared throughout Central Station." Captain Frank Miller was in the middle of breakfast when it sounded. Without hesitation, he stood up, his back straight, his mind clear. "All Pioneer crew, report to stations," he ordered into his communication device. Around him, aliens rushed about in confusion. Many had never heard the emergency alarm before. It had been decades since the last true emergency in Federation space. Miller reached the command center just as Admiral Vex of the Zentonians began speaking. "We have received a distress call from Outpost 7, the Admiral announced. "Unknown ships attacked without warning. The outpost reports heavy damage." The room filled with shocked murmurs. The Federation had known peace for so long that most species had forgotten what real danger felt like. "Our battlecruiser Celestial Harmony is responding," Admiral Vex continued. "They will arrive at Outpost 7 in 6 hours. Eric Sullivan, a human military consultant, stepped forward. "Admiral, may I ask about the Harmony's approach strategy?" The Admiral looked annoyed. "They will approach directly and engage the enemy," Sullivan frowned. "Without reconnaissance? Without knowing enemy numbers or capabilities?" "The Celestial Harmony is our most powerful ship," Vex said dismissively. "No pirate vessel would dare to challenge it." Miller and Sullivan exchanged worried glances but said nothing more. 6 hours later, the news arrived. The Celestial Harmony had been badly damaged. Over 100 crew members were dead or injured. The unknown enemy had escaped. In the emergency meeting that followed, Eric Sullivan studied the battle recordings. He noticed something that the aliens missed. "The attackers targeted the command deck first," he said. "They knew exactly where to hit." Admiral Vex waved a blue hand. "Coincidence? Pirates always aim for the largest part of a ship." "Not pirates," Sullivan insisted. "This was too organized, too precise." Again, the aliens ignored his input. 2 days later, the USS Pioneer received new orders. They were to help evacuate civilians from a small outpost near the attack site. Captain Miller gathered his crew. "This isn't a combat mission, but we'll treat it like one. Full defensive protocols." When they arrived at the outpost, Miller organized his team in groups of 3. Each group had assigned sectors and clear escape routes. They carried emergency supplies and weapons. The alien officials at the outpost watched the humans with confusion. "Why such caution?" asked the outpost leader, an elderly Arcasian. "The attack was far from here." "Better safe than sorry," Miller replied. The evacuation proceeded smoothly. The humans worked with quiet efficiency, always aware of their surroundings. They moved civilians to transport ships, helped with belongings, and kept everyone calm. Salvi, who had joined the mission as a Federation observer, watched the humans closely. "Your people move differently during a crisis," Salvi said to Jack Peterson. "More focused, more coordinated." Peterson nodded. "This is what we train for." "But there's no immediate danger here," Salvi pointed out. "We act as if there is," Peterson explained. "That way, if danger comes, we're ready." Back on Central Station, news of more attacks arrived. 3 small outposts had been hit. In each case, the command centers were the first targets. Olivia Martinez, the communications officer on the Pioneer, noticed something in the attack pattern. "These aren't random," she told Captain Miller. "The attacks are moving inward from the outer systems following shipping lanes." Miller took this information to Federation Command. Admiral Vex and other leaders listened, but seemed unconvinced. "Patterns, where none exist," one Voltar general growled. "Humans always see threats in the stars." As the meeting ended, Alan Wright, the science officer, approached Miller. "Captain, I've been studying these attacks," he said quietly. "They're targeting leadership in each location. Command centers, communication hubs, decision makers." Miller's face grew serious. "Someone who knows Federation protocols." "Exactly," Wright said. "And the Federation keeps putting all its leaders in one place at the center of every room, at the head of every ship." Miller looked around at the bustling station, at aliens going about their business without a care. "Keep this to yourself for now," he told Wright. "But implement our defensive measures on the Pioneer without drawing attention." That night, as Miller lay in bed, a message arrived from Earth Fleet Command. It was brief but clear. "Remain vigilant. Trust your instincts." Miller stared at the ceiling. The humans had been mocked for their caution, but soon that caution might save lives. Iteration protocols. "Exactly," Wright said. And the Federation keeps putting all its leaders in one place, at the center of every room, at the head of every ship. Miller looked around at the bustling station, at aliens going about their business without a care. Keep this to yourself for now, he told Wright. But implement our defensive measures on the Pioneer without drawing attention. That night, as Miller lay in bed, a message arrived from Earth Fleet Command. It was brief but clear. Remain vigilant. Trust your instincts. Miller stared at the ceiling. The humans had been mocked for their caution, but soon that caution might save lives. Admiral Kelly Harper arrived at Central Station on a small unmarked ship. She was tall and lean, with short gray hair and eyes that missed nothing. Captain Miller and his crew greeted her at the docking bay. "Good to see you, Frank," Harper said, shaking his hand firmly. "Earth is concerned about these attacks. The Federation still doesn't fully grasp the danger," Miller replied quietly. Harper nodded. "That's why I'm here." They walked together to the command center where Admiral Vex waited with other Federation leaders. The tension in the room was thick. "Admiral Harper," Vex said stiffly. "Welcome to Central Station." Harper nodded politely. "Thank you for allowing this meeting." Vex gestured to the large conference table. "Please join us at the center table." Harper glanced at Miller, then shook her head. "I prefer to stand if you don't mind." Several aliens exchanged looks. Another human behaving strangely. "We've called an emergency summit at Starbase Omega," Vex announced. "All Federation species will attend to discuss a unified response to these attacks." Harper studied the plans displayed on the screen. Starbase Omega has only 2 exit points and a centralized command structure. "It's our most secure facility," Vex said proudly. "It's a trap waiting to happen," Harper replied bluntly. The room fell silent. Vex's blue skin darkened with anger. "Admiral Harper, we understand humans have different views on security, but the Federation has managed its safety for centuries without Earth's input." Harper didn't back down. "And how many attacks had you faced in those centuries? These are different times." Miller stepped forward. "The location puts all Federation leadership in one place with limited escape routes. The attackers have shown they target leadership first. This is the same paranoia we've seen from humans since they arrived," an Arcasian diplomat complained. "Always seeing danger around every corner." Harper looked around the room slowly. "On Earth, we have a saying. Just because you're paranoid doesn't mean they aren't after you." Despite human objections, the summit at Starbase Omega was scheduled for 3 days later. The USS Pioneer and Admiral Harper's ship were ordered to attend. Before departing, Miller gathered his crew for a briefing. "I don't like this," he told them. "Starbase Omega is exactly the kind of target these attackers prefer." "What are our orders, Captain?" Samantha Green asked. "We follow Federation protocols publicly," Miller said. "But we implement our own security measures quietly. Every crew member carries emergency gear at all times. We use buddy systems. No one goes anywhere alone." Eric Sullivan spoke up. "Captain, I've created tactical response plans for various scenarios." "Good," Miller nodded. "Share them with Admiral Harper's security team." As they prepared to leave, Zalvi approached Miller in the corridor. "Captain, may I join your ship for the journey to Starbase Omega?" Miller studied the young Zentonian. "Why?" "I believe your concerns about the summit are valid," Zalvi said quietly. "I want to learn how humans prepare for danger." Miller agreed, and Zalvi joined them on the Pioneer. During the journey, Jack Peterson gave Zalvi a tour of the ship's security measures. "We have multiple backup systems," Peterson explained. "Alternative command posts, emergency protocols for different scenarios." "The Federation ships don't have these," Zalvi noted. "No," Peterson agreed. "They haven't needed them. Until now." When they arrived at Starbase Omega, Miller felt uneasy. The station was large and impressive, built in a perfect circular shape, with the main conference room in the center. Around it, Federation ships docked in neat, orderly patterns. "Too predictable," Harper muttered as they approached. "Too organized." Inside, the station buzzed with activity. Representatives from all 27 Federation species had arrived. The grand conference room gleamed with decorations. In the center sat a large round table for the most important leaders. Humans. Of course, we'll be seated along the back wall. An aide informed them with poorly hidden sarcasm. Of course, Miller replied calmly. As Federation leaders gathered, Miller noticed his crew taking positions near exits, just as they'd been trained. Harper did the same with her staff. The meeting began with Admiral Vex welcoming everyone. Today, we stand united against this new threat, he announced. Miller scanned the room constantly, unable to shake his feeling. Chaos erupted in the conference room. The first explosion knocked out the main lights, plunging everything into darkness. Emergency. Lights flickered on, casting red shadows across panicked faces. Defensive positions, Miller shouted to his crew. The humans reacted instantly. They had trained for this. Each crew member pulled small emergency lights from their pockets and activated them. They moved to protect nearby aliens, guiding them. Toward the walls, a second explosion rocked the station. The main doors burst open and strange figures rushed in. They were tall and insect-like, with multiple arms carrying weapons. Their armor was dark and seemed to absorb light. Vorax Collective, Zalvi gasped, recognizing the attackers from old Federation records. The Vorax moved with purpose, heading straight for the center table where Federation leaders sat exposed and confused. Admiral Harper didn't hesitate. Form a perimeter, she ordered the human security teams. Human guards formed a defensive line, pulling Federation officials behind them. Jack Peterson organized civilians into the corner furthest from the fighting, placing his own body between them and danger. Stay down and stay quiet, he instructed them. The Federation guards tried to respond but were caught unprepared. They had no unified plan, no defensive strategy. Many fell in the first wave of attacks. Miller pulled his weapon and took cover behind an overturned table. He spotted Admiral Vex, frozen in shock in the center of the room. "Admiral, get down!" Miller shouted. When Vex didn't move, Miller rushed forward, tackling the Zentonian just as laser fire cut through the space where he had been standing. They crashed to the floor behind a fallen column. "Stay here," Miller ordered, then moved to help others. Across the room, Samantha Green organized an evacuation through one of the service tunnels that human security had mapped during their arrival. "This way," she called to a group of frightened Arcasians. "We have a safe route out." The Vorax seemed surprised by the organized resistance. They had expected easy targets, not coordinated defense. For a moment, they hesitated. Admiral Harper used that moment to counterattack, she signaled to her security team, and they moved in a flanking pattern that Earth military had used for centuries. The Vorax, unprepared for such tactics, lost several fighters. Eric Sullivan coordinated with the few Federation guards who had regained their composure. "Focus fire on their lead attackers," he advised. "Disrupt their command structure." Lisa Davis moved among the different alien species, translating instructions and calming panic. Her cultural knowledge proved vital as she helped the humans communicate with frightened aliens who couldn't understand English. The humans knew, an Arcasian diplomat whispered as Davis guided her to safety. They were prepared all along. The battle raged for 20 minutes. The humans, despite being outnumbered, fought with coordination and purpose that confused the Vorax. Federation officials who had mocked human caution now found themselves protected by those same humans. Miller spotted Zalvi helping injured aliens. "Get them to the evacuation point," he called out. Zalvi nodded and continued working. Just as it seemed the humans might push the attackers back, a new group of Vorax entered through a side door. They carried larger weapons and wore heavier armor. "Fall back," Harper ordered, recognizing they were outgunned. The humans began a careful retreat, still protecting the aliens behind them. They moved toward the emergency exits they had identified earlier. Miller watched as Admiral Vex and several other high-ranking officials were cut off by Vorax fighters. Before the humans could reach them, the Vorax dragged the officials away. "They're taking hostages," Miller shouted to Harper. Harper nodded grimly. "We can't save everyone. Focus on who we can get out." The remaining humans formed a tight defensive, Formation, creating a corridor of safety through which hundreds of Federation delegates escaped. The Vorax, having captured their primary targets, seemed content to let the others flee. As they reached the emergency shuttles, Miller did a head count. Most of his crew had made it out, along with many Federation civilians. But the highest-ranking officials, those who had sat prominently in the center of the room, were gone. In the shuttle, an Arcasian turned to Miller with wide eyes. "How did you know this would happen?" Miller didn't answer. He was too busy planning their next move. The Vorax had won this round, but the fight had only just begun. And now, finally, the Federation understood what the humans had known all along. Sitting at the back wasn't paranoia. It was survival, of dread. Something wasn't right. Then he noticed a slight flicker in the lights. A moment later, he heard it. A faint sound no one else seemed to notice. Miller caught Harper's eye across the room. She had heard it too. He reached for his communication device just as the first explosion rocked the station. 3 days after the attack, survivors gathered at the human section of Central Station. The USS Pioneer had become a refuge for Federation officials who had escaped the Vorax. The mood was somber. Everyone had lost friends and colleagues. Captain Miller entered the crowded room where representatives from 20 different species waited. The aliens looked at him differently now. There was no mockery in their eyes, only questions. "How did you know?" asked a Voltard general whose fierce appearance couldn't hide his confusion. "How did humans know to prepare for such an attack?" Miller glanced at Zalvi, who nodded encouragingly. "We didn't know this specific attack would happen," Miller explained. "Humans always prepare for the worst while hoping for the best." Admiral Harper stepped forward. "For thousands of years, humans lived in constant danger. Predators, natural disasters, wars. Those who survived were those who stayed vigilant. But your planet is safe now," an Arcasian diplomat said. "You have technology, civilization. Safety is never guaranteed," Harper replied. "It must be earned every day through awareness and preparation." Zalvi moved to the center of the room. The young Zentonian had changed since the attack. There was a new confidence in his stance. "I've been studying human history," Zalvi told the gathered aliens. "Their planet shaped them in ways we can't imagine. For most of their existence, humans were both predator and prey." The room grew quiet as Zalvi continued. "Humans developed what they call situational awareness. They constantly scan for danger. They monitor exits, they protect their backs. These aren't signs of fear, they're tools for survival." An elderly Arcasian shook her head. "But the Federation has known peace for generations. We had no reason to develop such habits." "And that made you vulnerable," Miller said gently. "The Vorax knew exactly where to find your leaders. In the center of every room, on raised platforms wearing distinct clothing. Understanding dawned on alien faces around the room. What they had mocked as paranoia was actually wisdom born from harsh experience." Admiral Vex entered, his blue skin pale from injury. He walked slowly to where Miller stood. "The Federation Council has met," Vex announced. "For the first time in our history, we face an enemy we cannot negotiate with. The Vorax have rejected all communication attempts." He paused, clearly struggling with what came next. "Captain Miller, Admiral Harper, the Council requests that humans take charge of Federation security and defense planning. We need your perspective." Harper and Miller exchanged glances. This was unprecedented. "We'll help, in any way we can," Harper assured him. Lisa Davis, who had been quietly observing, spoke up. "The first step is understanding why humans do what we do. Our behaviors aren't random, they're based on experience." She activated a display showing Earth's long history of conflict and survival. Humans sitting at the back of rooms isn't paranoia, it's tactical positioning. We keep our backs protected and maintain sight lines to all entrances. We watch people's hands because that's where weapons appear first. We count exits because we never want to be trapped." As she spoke, Federation members listened with new respect. The very behaviors they had ridiculed now seemed like invaluable skills. We're not afraid of what's coming, Miller added. We're ready for it. A Voltar officer stood up. Teach us, he said simply. In the days that followed, humans began training Federation species in basic security protocols. Jack Peterson established defense classes. Eric Sullivan taught tactical planning. Samantha Green organized emergency response teams. The Federation quickly learned that human preparation wasn't based on fear, but on accepting reality. Danger exists, and ignoring it doesn't make you safer. One evening, Admiral Vex found Miller working late in the command center. We mocked you for so long, Vex said quietly. All those times you insisted on sitting against walls. Monitoring exit. 2 months passed. The Federation had changed completely. Under human guidance, security, protocols transformed how every species operated. Jack Peterson and Eric Sullivan established an interspecies security academy. Aliens from all Federation worlds came to learn human defensive tactics. They studied not just fighting techniques but awareness, preparation, and threat assessment. Stand where you can see the whole room. Peterson instructed a class of 20 aliens. Know your exits. Watch people's hands, not their eyes. The aliens listened carefully. No one mocked these ideas anymore. Captain Miller walked through Central Station, noting the changes. Meeting rooms had been redesigned with multiple exits. Command centers were no longer in obvious central locations. Leaders no longer wore distinctive clothing that made them easy targets. In the main gathering hall, Miller smiled as he watched Federation officials taking seats along walls, just as humans had always done. New lighting systems made corners and doorways more visible. Security teams monitored crowd movements using patterns Miller had designed. Admiral Harper joined him. Quite a change, she observed. Miller nodded. They're quick learners when properly motivated. The Vorax gave them plenty of motivation, Harper said grimly. Intelligence reports confirmed that the Vorax Collective planned a major invasion of Federation space. The hostages taken from Starbase Omega, including several high-ranking officials, had not been found. But the Federation was no longer an easy target. Olivia Martinez had created new communication protocols that couldn't be easily intercepted. Alan Wright had developed scanning systems to detect Vorax ships before they attacked. Every Federation vessel now followed human-designed defensive patterns. In the command center, Admiral Vex called an emergency meeting. Federation leaders gathered, but not in the center of the room as they once would have. Instead, they spread out along walls near exits, just as humans had taught them. Our scouts report Vorax ships approaching from 3 directions, Vex announced. Their main fleet will arrive within 6 hours. Instead of panic, the room remained calm. Everyone had trained for this moment. Defensive Plan Delta, Vex ordered, referring to a strategy Miller and Sullivan had created. Ships moved into position. Forces spread out rather than concentrating in one place. Command structures were duplicated so no single leader was indispensable. When the Vorax fleet arrived, they found not chaos but organized resistance. Federation ships used unpredictable movements, making them difficult targets. When Vorax forces attacked Central Station directly, they discovered that the command center had been moved to a secret location. The battle was fierce. Many lives were lost on both sides. But unlike before, the Federation was prepared. They fought with purpose and coordination that the Vorax hadn't expected. Miller stood on the bridge of the USS Pioneer, directing his section of the defense. Beside him stood Zalvi, now serving as a Federation tactical officer. They expected us to be easy prey again, Zalvi observed as Vorax ships retreated from their position. Never underestimate a species that has learned to survive, Miller replied. After 18 hours of fighting, the Vorax withdrew. They had expected another easy victory but found a transformed enemy instead. The hostages were recovered from a damaged Vorax vessel, shaken but alive. In the days that followed, Federation leaders gathered for a victory celebration. The large hall was set up differently than it would have been months earlier. Tables lined the walls. Multiple exits remained clear. Security teams stood at strategic points. Admiral Vex raised a glass. To our human friends, who taught us what we had forgotten, that peace is precious, because it can be lost, and that vigilance is not paranoia but wisdom. The crowd applauded. Across the room, humans and aliens sat together, sharing stories and plans. A new Federation representative recently arrived from a distant planet, looked confused at the unusual room arrangement. "Why does everyone sit against the walls?" he asked Salvi. "Isn't the center more comfortable?" Salvi smiled. "Let me tell you about humans," he began. "When they first joined us, we mocked them for always sitting at the back of rooms. We thought they were paranoid or primitive. And now?" the representative asked. "Now we understand," Salvi said, gesturing to the hall where aliens of all species had adopted human habits. They weren't afraid of what might come, they were ready for it. Across the room, Miller watched with satisfaction. The humans hadn't changed the Federation by force or demanded recognition. They had simply brought their ancient wisdom: hope for peace, prepare for danger, and always, always watch the door. Miller nodded. "Old habits." "Not habits," Vex corrected. "Wisdom. The kind we forgot during centuries of peace." "Peace makes people complacent," Miller said. "There's nothing wrong with peace, but there's everything wrong with being unprepared when it ends." Vex looked at the tactical displays showing Vorax movements across Federation space. "And now," he said, solemnly, "it has ended.